It's time for Show Off Sunday, where everyone has a chance to show off their own car, and here's this week's winner.
Hello, my name is Ian now, and this is Mitzi, my 55 Ford Fairlane. Mitzi here is a 4-door town sedan. It's one of the mid-tier models under the Crown Vic and Sunliner. I have had this old girl since about 2012, and she's the first classic car I've ever owned or worked on. We first bought her from this couple who had kept her in a barn, essentially preserved from the elements. They drove her around for a few years, went to some car shows, and then in the late 80s she was parked and stored for 18 years. She first rolled off the assembly line on January 20th in Des Moines, Iowa. The previous owner had been a physician, and this was his work car he used to do home visits. Obviously, I didn't know the original owner, but something you're struck with when you look at this car is the wonderful condition she's in after all this time. He obviously cared a lot about this car and kept her in pristine condition and her mileage low. This car had just over 38,000 miles when we got her. This care is even more impressive when you think about how Fairlanes like this were very common back in the day and were kind of throwaway cars. Something interesting I found out years later is that she originally was all white according to the body plate, and at some point the blue two-tone was added. Not sure exactly when. A very interesting find was found a few years ago when I was cleaning the interior. I found an almost entirely intact folded newspaper dated from the 60s under the front seat. It's amazing how simple things like newspapers can become historical treasures with age, and being under the seat like that, the pages were totally preserved other than the discoloration of the paper. As for the specs, this car has an air-cooled Ford-O-Matic transmission. This is actually Ford's first automatic transmission, introduced in 1951. The engine is a 272 cubic inch Y-block V8, crowned with the famously odd-looking Holley 4000 teapot 4-barrel carburetor and oil bath air cleaner. The Y-block itself is a rather underappreciated historical engine in its own right, as it was Ford's first overhead valve engine, replacing the tried-and-true flathead engine in 1954. As for the interior and extras, it's a bit more bare bones. No power steering or power brakes. In fact, the only thing powered is the seat, which is pretty cool in its own right, and it does still work. There is no factory installed radio in this car, but I later bought and installed one to complete the look of the dash. It's a very neat radio with the round clock dial front. As for the analog clock, I actually had it taken out and got it ticking again by myself, which is a very neat experience. I did have the tires replaced with radials, mostly due to the price of new bias ply tires. The original bias ply tires actually had held air in them after all this time, but they were just so cracked up it wasn't safe to drive on them. I did, however, keep the spare that was in the trunk. I personally don't know why you never seem to see any of these cars in car shows like you do with the 55 Chevys and such. I personally think they have a very beautiful style to them. I always love the sweeping side trim, the way it bends down from the top of the fender and kind of check marks back up, the angled chrome eyelashes. There's a large abundance of chrome on these cars. It just looks great. Since this car had been so taken care of over its 60-year-old life, I made a big deal to keep everything as original as possible and to not modify anything aesthetically. This is the first car I'd ever done any engine work on, and all I had was a reprint of the original service manual and some basic tools. It's a testament to how easy to work on these old cars were. Originally, the car would do nothing at all, not even crank, but I was vehemently against swapping out engines. I think a big part of the feeling of driving a classic car is knowing that it's being propelled by the same engine it left the factory with. The starter is rebuilt, as is the generator and the carburetor. The fuel pump, master cylinder, and ignition components are all new other than the distributor itself, which is still using the old style points and the 6-volt positive ground electrical system. Driving a classic car is a very neat experience. It feels nothing at all like a modern car does. While I wouldn't personally recommend driving one as a daily driver, it's a lot of great fun cruising on the weekends and going to car shows. Thanks for watching, and thanks to Scotty Kilmer Show for hosting me. I've got several videos of this car's restoration on my channel if you're interested. Rev up those engines!
Well, that was this week's video, and remember, To have your car video highlighted here on my channel, check this out! So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell!